often have you heard the phrase that history repeats itself? Referencing wars, political agendas, characteristics, and behaviors. What if history is already repeating itself? I'd like to talk to you specifically about antibiotic resistance today. As a nursing student, this is a very prominent concern in our career field. First, I'd like to talk about natural and artificial causes, and then we'll move on to maybe exploring some of what the future might hold. In Campbell Biology's 2012 publication, they tell us that natural selection is the foundation for the theory of evolution. This affects all living organisms, including bacteria. Mutations in DNA create variety within a species. Not all mutations are harmful. In fact, most have no effect due to redundancy in the DNA code. Some, however, impose negative or positive effects. The genetic resistance for bacteria is simply a mutation that's allowed the organism to exist in a harsh environment, surviving and adapting and reproducing. Albinoism is a mutation. For the tree frog that requires the green pigment to survive in its environment, it has a stronger benefit over the albino one that's lacking the pigment and cannot use camouflage to avoid predators. Bacteria also have the ability to take free DNA in their environment from other dead cells, dead bacteria, including different strains or species of bacteria, and incorporate that into their own DNA, thus passing on different codes and mutations to their daughter cells. Within hours, they've reproduced exponentially and effectively created generations of antibiotic-resistant bacteria strains. Nature isn't the sole contributor to this phenomenon. Medical and technological advances have also contributed. By understanding natural selection's role in antibiotic resistance, we can now compound its prevalence with humanistic contributions. Travelers have been tasked with spreading disease since they began. With the invention of transatlantic ships and later airplanes, pandemics are a real international concern. The average business traveler can go through 5 countries on 2 different continents in about 48 to 72 hours, which is a typical incubation period. Disease can spread faster now than ever. Urbanization and development of third world countries exposes certain specific populations to new life. New plants, new animals, and new bacteria. These bacteria adapt to their new hosts, and they share their mutations, their genetic codes, with these usually harmless bacteria, such as the Shiga-toxin E. coli. The National Institute of Health tells us that E. coli is a natural bacteria that exists in our body, which is otherwise harmless when kept in check. However, when exposed to mutations, it can produce a toxin that makes us ill, which we treat with antibiotics. Poverty and poor living conditions are also very conducive to disease. Lack of clean drinking water, poor food preparation and storage cause foodborne illnesses caused by bacteria, which we also treat with antibiotics. Antibiotics have changed the lives of millions of people for the better. With that being said, I'd like to take a look at the overall effect, not just the benefits. We've seen how nature and advancements in life can contribute to the whole picture. Now let's examine the most common cause of antibiotic resistance. Antibiotic use and abuse. Antibiotics change the world so profoundly that none of us could imagine life without them. In 1940, penicillin was introduced to humane society, and since then, over 150 antibiotics have been introduced. Carbapenem drugs are the last line of defense that we have against multi-resistant bacteria infections. And in 2009, carbapenem-resistant strains were found in Greece and have been spreading throughout Europe since then. In fact, 25,000 people a year in Europe die from multi-resistant infections. A British news article quoted Margaret Chan, head of the World Health Organization, as saying, "The world faces the end of modern medicine as we know it." The National Health Institute lists some contributions to some of the causes of antibiotic resistance. Blanket prescriptions by physicians, just to say, just in case you have this, go ahead and take this. Inappropriate use, overprescribing drugs to placate insistent patients or inaccurate diagnoses. And a newer one on the scene is the antibiotic use in agriculture and livestock. The bigger picture that we have here for the problem is artificial selection, which works similar to natural selection, except for we as humans are controlling the outcome. We are selecting for the survival of adapted, resistant bacteria to maintain, thrive, and grow in an environment uninhibited by competition. What's the bigger question here? Which stands, the WHO, which is the World Health Organization, has released numerous articles and bulletins addressing a very live concern. They're quoted as saying, "The antibiotics pipeline is drying up while resistance to existing drugs is increasing." They further explained, after doing a little bit of research, that a comprehensive study of antibiotic development in 2008 showed that only 15 antibiotics of 167 being developed had a new mechanism of action with the potential to meet the challenge of multi-drug resistance. They also encountered more of a financial problem. They realized that there's no investment return with antibiotics. They are short-term use, they cure their target, and they're relatively inexpensive on the market. Compared to chronic illness drugs for blood pressure, diabetes, heart problems, companies have figured out that they make a lot more money selling the latter drugs than they do selling antibiotics. So, in a world without antibiotics, it existed before our time. We've read about it in school books. We've heard it from our families. We've heard it from teachers. But can we really imagine what it would be like when we have a pharmacy and a clinic on every corner? Today, I've talked about natural selection, natural and artificial causes, and what the future may hold. In summary, I'd just like to say that the history made progress towards antibiotics. Our generations are most likely to see a regression to a new dark age of medicine.